I believe I actually did own Lloyd's of London, actually, at one point in time. Still possibly do, actually. The building, of course. Well, what it was they were handling a bit of my of my work. Um, Back then, those little pincher devices, the little thing that kind of go like this and kind of go like that, that was my design back then. And they were lifting up blocks with it. Like I said, I own a quarry. I own the quarry, and this is how it all kind of connects. And I was having my factories built because, well, my factories were always the nicest factories. I had all the water power, and in fact, like I say, a lot of bridges were constructed to grind stone for the different factories that I was building. And then I also had my harnessing harnessing lightning thing, um, and stuff like that, and playing around with that. But back then, the little pinchers kept bending, and whenever they would lift up stone, they had a lot of they didn't have the strong steel that they do today, and so the little ends would always bend on them, and and my pinchers were always overrated. If my pinchers were rated to pick up a 20-pound block, they could actually pick up like a 40-pound block. Um, and they would pick up some very big, massive stones with these pinchers. And they would either pick it up from the middle or pick it up from the bottom, to the point where the stone actually became the part that would break. Probably how the pyramid was actually built. Um, but Lloyd's of London, I believe, was handling a certain part of my business back then over there, um, and the little pinchers. And a lot of the bridges that you call bridges were actually waterway factories or power plants. Yes, cursing the power of a river. Yeah, free energy. Um, it was there. So and sometimes they'd get washed out in big storms. So what they would do is the power plant section would be where the river was, and then they would run a shaft out to where the actual factory was, in case the power plant ever got washed away. And so that's why a lot of the channels are these U-shaped channels, because right in front of that, or right behind that, I mean, there would be, well, sometimes in front and sometimes behind, there would be a big water wheel. And as the water went through, it would go. And finally, later on, I built one factory where the water actually went over it or underneath it or something like that, and they had a cut textile there, and and that was my factory as well. So I had a lot of free energy factories that just ran off of the river. Back then, there used to be a little bit more water too, so water was a little bit higher. But as the climate changed, a lot of these places became not enough water was there. So anyway, that's kind of how that all went, and that's my involvement over the years with that. Like I said, I was quite a different person back then, and very, 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 very wealthy, like outrageously wealthy. I could ask for anything. In fact, the Renaissance, as you say, in Roman times, was actually more an effect of me being alive and me wanting the best and me being that good of an inventor and that rich. And that's kind of how human history ended up with that. Later on, that became Caterpillar and the modern day era. And I kind of had to step back on the whole outrageously good-looking buildings because of the fact that there were just so many people that I had to cut some corners. I miss it though. I miss the days when I was insanely wealthy and I was like, I want it to be nice. So a lot of my factories were really nice because I like to have, I wanted to have my factory look nice as well as, be nice. I didn't want these big ugly buildings that were going to just be factories. So anyway, so they took a fair amount of care and effort into making nice looking factories because they were going to be there a while. So, and they were there for probably 100 years at least. I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly. I mean, but for a long time, people use belts and people use these factories, free water wheel factories. The only thing that had to ever be replaced was the water wheels themselves, and I think they used wood or something. They used different materials to make the water wheels work very nicely. Um, First water wheels, of course, were wood. There was stone for the actual aqueducts, which worked really well. And then they used the water wheels were made out of wood and stuff, and eventually they rotted away or were removed because they weren't needed anymore because electrical power was so much better and so much more available. Finally, we had a fair amount of copper. But in the days when we didn't have copper and we didn't have a lot of steel, the bridges and power plant sections were the only way to get to do this kind of stuff. And I own them, and in fact, I own the rights to several of the rivers. In fact, and there are quite a few rivers probably that basically I own the rights to, or own the rights to. Only I could build my power plants on there because there are just too many power plants being put on the rivers, and it's slowing down the rivers too much. So I actually had to put a stop to some factories being built. And in fact, and then that's kind of where we branch off into steam power as well, because but a lot of the rivers were used for mines, for crushing minerals and stuff, and also making power, which ran the what's called the electrolysis machines, which refine the minerals and stuff. The general process for refining. A lot of that was powered by water wheels and stuff at first, as it was the easiest and cheapest thing to do. And I made lots of money, I guess, doing that. And lots of bridges and lots of rivers were made. And I was very, 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 very influential and very, very popular in England and the United Kingdom. As it was a free power thing. Anyway, now many hundreds of years have passed, and I'm old. But yeah, a long time ago, that was stuff I was inventing and stuff I was doing and stuff I was being a part of. I was a child, and it was being done underneath me. So anyway, kind of how I became so wealthy and how I became so influential as I was the inventor, inventing all this stuff. And I owned carriages. I sold and had several carriage factories, lots of things factories. Now we stand 100 years later, and I'm a person. And people have almost just about forgotten who I was. So anyway, yeah, but I was.